A lot has happened over the summer to each and every one of us and to technology as a whole. And maybe it's not so much the technology has moved so much as we've found some time to look at what's around. And so I'm just going to take these 15 minutes, and there's the first highlight where we have here 15 minutes of fame. I guess 15 minutes of fame came from Andy Warhol. And 15 minutes of fame is important because you can now upload 15 minutes of YouTube without being a partner. That can be good or bad. So we'll talk about, in effect, is 15 minutes too long when you're trying to kernelize and nuggetize key concepts. Another thing that's new and exciting, is what I know, is that last time I checked, that the Khan Academies is going to be on both YouTube and on iTunes University. And if you don't know what any of these things are, you'll figure it out soon enough. It is going to be out on iTunes University, which makes a lot of these teaching videos quite accessible through your iPod. And we're going to see development even as we go through the semester of how these things can be used by both faculty and students. Alright, so that's a couple of things. The next thing is, of course, just on a personal note, I have found that sometimes mimicry, not spelled right, is flattery. And I'll introduce you to this concept here of biomimicry. Mimicry. And of course we'll have to look with spell check. And biomimicry is where we use and study biological systems to get their engineering, to more or less beg, borrow, or steal engineering. We take some, for instance, perhaps maybe the shape of a porpoise to make a torpedo. That's biomimicry. Not a very good porpoise, not a very good torpedo. And in this sense that mimicry is flattery, I have now discovered a product called, whoa, that didn't help. Shift this back. A product called, let me see if I can now do this. A product called smoothdraw. And that's what I'm essentially using right now to do my scrawls here. Smoothdraw, I'm also the input, so that's smoothdraw 3.2.6. Cancel, don't want the new software, quit that. Smoothdraw, which is freeware. I am using a bamboo, but I'm going to point out that pen interfaces are coming along, especially in terms of Apple's new trackpad. So I'm using something here called a bamboo, which does have some dollars attached to it. Alright, so why am I using the bamboo? Why am I using smoothdraw, even though there's other ones that are around? Partly it's cost, but partly because I am mimicking Sal Khan. And I don't need you to mimic him. I don't need you to even care for him or like him. But I will point out that he is one person out there that's going to give you some basic location, some place to go to do a review of what you have learned in the past. Alright, so there's 5 minutes there. Let's see how we deal with a new page. So, File, Save As, and we're just going to do, not too good there, but I'll go ahead and put it there, Save, and then do File, New. and now I've got a new page. And you notice here I've shifted a little off the page, and what I'm using here, I'm actually trying to take full advantage of what is not YouTube. YouTube allows 1080, which I think is something like 19 something by 1080 pixels, but I'm basically using this right now as 1280 by 720. So if we look at here, the pixelization of the screen I've got in front of me here, that across from here to here, I've got, whoop, when I don't hit that little pen, I've got that as being 1280. And let me change the color here, and I've got this distance as being 720. Now, eventually you're going to see this ratio of 1280 to 720 is going to approximate something called phi, or the golden ratio. Now you can debate it and or not, but you're going to see that this ratio that you see here is going to be something that's going to come up a lot in terms of graphics and art. So let's get to what I'm going to fill up the rest of this time on, and that is starting with some basic review of what I presume Da Vinci knew and nobody else did. Others might not have. Which means that one could say that is so pre-20th century. But it is my contention that essentially to get 21st century skills, you at least have to respect the 20th century skills, the 19th century skills, the 18th century skills, the 17th century skills, and realistically going back up to however far back you go based on your belief system. Now you have to respect, you don't have to know or have them, but you do have to respect them. So we'll spend a little bit of time on class kind of investigating where some of this knowledge we probably have pretty deep in our souls, how to catch a ball. Where did that come in? Where does the math of that come in? So I'm rambling, as I expect to do as I'm trying to use this interface. So let me see, let's just look at this interface now to get you to some 21st century skills. Let's start with that, and this basic, a sharing sketching program, which is smoothdraw. Again, we're going to go File, Save, we'll call that 222, save. Alright, so once File, New. Now I've got, in effect, I've got 3 pages going back that's stored in a particular document here. Alright, so let's see what this thing does for me. Well, you do not see, but I'm going to show you what I'm using off the screen. So I'm going to pull this thing down here and work a little bit off of smoothdraw. So within smoothdraw here, you're going to see one of the things why it's a kind of a good one. It does allow you eventually to use tablet pressure, right? And dealing with tablets here, pen interfaces, I would say is one of the first investments I would get on top of a basic computer. Personally, I would get a little bit less in your computer potentially if it meant being able to get a pen interface. So brush size, all that stuff. So I can more or less, right here, I'm going to make my brush size a little bigger. I'm going to see what kind of stuff I got. Glorified paint. There's something there. But what I'm looking at here is, in effect, how this is picking up on my capture. Now I want to point out, next thing I want to point out here is that, in fact, I'm capturing with a program called Camtasia, right? Which you'll know it as Jing or Cam Studio. Okay, Camtasia has some cost. It's probably a student cost of around $150, which is pretty expensive, to tell you the truth. But what it does is it allows me to get a very compact file. Now, Cam Studio, you can download. Jing, you can download, and each of these are less compact but equally functional. Less compact but equally functional. Now, what this means is when I get to a point where I'm at 15 minutes, I'm going to stop, and you'll see how quickly it delivers out to the web, out with YouTube. And so YouTube allows essentially 2 gig or 15 minutes if you're not a partner. All right, so let's see what else this thing has. Well, it has butterflies. That's a beautiful thing. I like the butterflies. Kids like the butterflies. Even better, it has an ability to draw this kind of line. Well, as we start looking at blocking and drafting and in a true engineering engine, you got to start to appreciate how far this freeware has come. This highlighting here of kind of a pixel, kind of a half ink, or a little bit more than half ink, as you're trying to do things potentially that are going to be depicted in black and white. There's some smudging, I think, going on here. That must be a stamp. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. All right. You got an eraser there. You have a soft eraser, which is a little bit more interesting. You have water drop to kind of fade things out. Smudge. Okay, and you notice all this that I'm doing here only kind of works well if you've got a pen interface. So what you're seeing in front of me here is I'm swirling and doing some art, right? Realistically, the keyboard is nice and efficient for many things, but we have a lot of experience using our hands, whether it's to pick up bugs or throw balls or poke our sisters or brothers. So what I'm doing all here is all kind of being done on a pen interface, on the Bamboo here. So I want to point out again why my belief is that getting a pen interface for doing any kind of computer work and not relying on it solely, you need a number of these interfaces, why getting a pen interface is worthwhile. Let's see what else we got here. We got some of that, we got some paintless, we've got spraying this way, must have something for calligraphy. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to change on this. I've got a very light touch and a very heavy touch. Light touch, heavy touch. Light touch, heavy touch. And we're coming up now in about 15 minutes, so I'm going to stop here in a second. So this again, why am I using this program? File. Save as. I'm using this program because Sal uses it. Now, is this blind admiration of Sal? Partly. File. Okay, so Sal Khan. I'm using some engineering judgment here. I'm going to say that, and here's the engineering judgment I'm using to use smoothdraw. That's the kind of interface here, and the Bamboo. So that's the pen interface. Smoothdraw is the sketching interface. Okay, if in fact in a complex world you have professional affiliations, whether they're virtual or real, with someone who tends to give you the right answer most of the time, and sometimes that right answer, I'm losing this here, that right answer, right, sometimes that right answer is maybe something like the integral of x dx from 0 to 5. Okay? Sometimes they give you the right answer. And the next time they do, and the next time they do, and the next two, and the next two. Now, you start to develop some bit of trust on there. T-R-U-S-T. Alright? And I think this is x squared over 2, just so you know. And so that's 12 and a half. Right now, I hope that's right. And I'm going to end this at 15 minutes. But if Sal gives me all the right answers for a lot of things, I'm going to trust him on the software. Thanks for listening. That's 15 minutes.